All right, is my screen share on right now? Oh, you got it muted.
No, it's not. But we see your good looks.
Okay, almost to where I'm wanting to be here. All right. Okay, sure. All right. I think what you have up here right now is first page of the book I've been working on. I guess for those of your audience who don't know me, name is Andrew Hoy. I'm a mechanical engineer. I spent some time in Israel learning Hebrew, and came back and started studying cherubim, actually. And in that study of cherubim, I happened upon the tabernacle curtains. Personally, I had no real interest in anything about the tabernacle. I'm sure if you guys have tried studying it before, it tends to generate a lot of yawns. People are pretty indifferent because it's archaic. People look at it as like, well, that's the wilderness tabernacle that they built on Mount Sinai. They just used that for a while. It's just a tent. The temple came along. The temple's better, right? So nobody really gives it much of a look or consideration. And it's kind of ironic because the tabernacle outlasted the temple by a number of years. It was in service basically 480 years, which again is longer than either the first or the second temple. And the reason that people, I guess, don't understand it, they're going back to tradition on this all the time. So there's the tabernacle it's fabricated with curtains and wood and metal pieces, silver, gold, copper, and the curtains, nobody really gives them much look. I have a Ramban here. Where is that? I don't know if anyone's got any of the art scroll series in their libraries, but Ramban art scroll, opening to those pages that talk about the curtains. These guys are putting out full pages of commentary for just a single verse. But when you go and look at what they have to say about the curtains in here, pretty much nothing. They just skip right into the frame. The curtains, they're the key to the whole structure. You have certain sizes and certain quantities. You have 30 curtains that are made. 11 curtains made 30 cubits long, and they're 4 wide. So they're really long and narrow strips. And these strips, they attach them together the wrong way, actually. So let me get this different screen here. Okay. The way that traditionally they attach them all on the long edges. And when you attach them on the long edges, they make a wide fabric swatch. And this wide fabric swatch, they think it goes over that rectangular structure. And if you join them on the short edges, you have okay, so we have a total of 11. The last one is folded in half. And so you have a total of 315 in your full circumference. And it says in one verse to take a little from here, a little from there, about a cubit. And once you do that, you get 314. So when I was studying this, I happened upon that math phenomenon. If you flip the curtains or if you join them on the short edges, and it actually says to join them on the cut edges, which if you're loom weaving, you are you're pulling the fabric long across a a couple of sticks or something, and it's the edges, and in King James it says the outermost edges. So those are the edges that you are supposed to join them at, and not along the other ones. So the scripture, again, the way it's translated, that they basically will say on the hem sometimes. Again, that's not really what the Hebrew is conveying. So once you have that, that paradigm, everything else just it falls into place. It's in a sense it's an engineering symphony that's been in Hebrew all the time. So this has been hidden in plain sight for at least since well before the time of Josephus, actually, because Josephus he mentions the dimensions of the tabernacle again that are based on connecting the edges the wrong way. So that's kind of the intro to it. Rolling through a few pages of my book, I've got 2 books that I've been working on. One of them is The House of El Shaddai, and that's kind of what exploring God's house. This one gets a little bit more into Hebrew, and so this is basically a little bit more, well, a little more scholarly audience, I guess. So I'm making the 2, hoping that anyone who's Hebrew phobic can still feel comfortable with this, and that's what you're looking at right now. So let's see. Traditionally in Exodus 26, the first 14 verses are dedicated to coverings, which you're seeing up right here. Let me get my pointer tool up here. Okay. So that right there is the first layer of linen curtains what they traditionally put on. There are altogether 10 of those. They're 28 cubits long. So again, you have all these dimensions are given, and nobody stops to ask why. Why would you connect all of these long, narrow strips only to make one strip? If the objective was to make one large strip of fabric, why not say make a large strip measuring 40 by 28? That's what that dimension is.
Is that the temple cubit? Or is that the regular cubit?
Well, the dimensions are subject to debate. You've got altogether 3 cubits, or 3 typical standards that people reference. One is kind of an 18-inch cubit, one's a 21, and one is 25-inch. So you have the sacred cubit, I think is what they refer to as the 25. The common cubit, is that 18? I think typically, or in the royal cubit. Well, maybe I'm mixing up the royal and the sacred. But one's 21, and there's actually cubits as small as 15 in some cultures. So it depends upon I guess really what you want to commit to on cubit size. There's material weights, and then there's also there are material there's weights, and then there's dimensions. And so you're trying to convert these to modern units, so you can figure out, well, how large is this and how many pounds is that? And, you're trying to make a model that represents something real. And all of the weights on there, this is another part of the rectangular model is they do not track their materials well at all. But if you look at the blocks, basically down on this at the base of the tabernacle there, what you'll see is that they make big silver blocks and big copper blocks that would weigh, upwards of a couple thousand pounds almost, and they're using 50 times more material than they're supposed to. So at the end of Exodus, there's mention of how many talents. They're using 1 talent of silver per piece. So 1 talent of silver is typically thought to be about 70 or 75 pounds. At the top end, maybe 130. At the low end, maybe 35 or something like that. But most people are pretty content with it, the talent being 70 to 75 pounds. As far as historians, again, that has changed with different empires and whatnot over the course of history. But what they have there is these big anchor bases is at the base of the structure, which you just can't substantiate in Exodus if you're calculating density and material volume. So
I had read that the temple in Ezekiel and the temple scroll actually used an Egyptian cubit.
Yeah, so the Egyptian cubit, they had 21-inch cubits, and they also used 25 from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to believe that it's 25. You have Exodus 25, I think 25:20. 25.2. David Flynn does quite a write-up on the cubit in his Temple of the Center Time book, and I haven't studied the history of all that measurement as extensively as he did, but when I saw that, I was impressed. So you have the issue of what is credible from a material standpoint. How tall would this been? Why did it need to be the size that it is? I think that these they call it the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is given a certain measure, and so you have that from the Hebrew orech. This notion of length, and it's never called the Ark in Hebrew. It's called the Aron, which is just a different word, different meaning conveyed. But we've nicknamed it the Ark, and again, Ark having to do with length. You've got architecture, archaeology, an arch. All these things come from that Hebrew term, which is referring to either dimensions, linear dimensions, curved dimensions, or units of time. And again, units of time with the sun passing in the sky, that's another arc or arch. So I think that this, is pointing to the Ark of the Covenant being kind of used as a measurement standard or of some sort, if you will. So anyway, there's that and the talent. So you're trying to balance a kind of an implied volume with lengths on these things from the standpoint of when you're actually looking at how these materials would actually be applied. This rectangular model, let me back up here. Go forward. Okay. I'm sorry, I was just trying to find another handy use of some of the other, really bad architecture. Let me bring up another. Maybe I'll switch to a different screen share here, sorry. Okay. Sorry about this.
What's the name of the program we're viewing?
I'm using an Elgato game card thing, so I can basically link one computer with my pen, my tablet for the touchscreen, but not working out as well as I had hoped. So I'm trying to go back to my other computer to bring up some of the other images that I have. Okay, buildings. There we go. So right now, I guess this is the Holman model, but you know, I was talking before about the big silver blocks. Are you seeing this this Holman model, this
Yeah.
A-frame type structure? So you have all these big blocks down here. They've got the A-frame pitched roof. This is the same as the Jewish Encyclopedia has. Let's see here. Okay. This is again very characteristic. Here they've got, you know, large silver pieces on top. You know, why do you put big silver pieces on top of a pole like that unless you want it to fall over? You have these posts themselves. They're made of copper, according to Exodus 27. A lot of times they'll put in you know, wood posts. You know, they assume it's a wood post with a copper base at the bottom. So this is all very you know, nobody's paying any attention to units of measure, weights, all that sort of thing. You
mean this is to say that this is really all these old pictures are just simply tradition?
That nobody gives a rip about some of the details, and you start to count these things and look at these things. Here you can see there's like a border kind of floating around the perimeter of this box. In the Hebrew, it's referred to as the one ring, and so to make a square ring is kind of contrary to a ring. And then yeah, you again have all these poles with the you know, big heavy weights up top, and again they're assuming a base connection here. So yeah, they're collectively baseless, and the reason they keep doing this is the reason that they've done this is because the curtains. It's always because the curtains. They start off in that wrong direction, like, you know, when you're on a bus and that bus takes a wrong turn to Toledo, and you were hoping to go to LA. You know, you're stuck on the road you're traveling on. And so,
does it actually say ring?
Yeah.
Oh.
Let me bring up my tool here. Yeah, I wanted to have all this stuff up before with the reboot. Didn't really help me there. Okay, 26, 25.
It's too small for us to see clearly.
Okay.
Maybe you could enhance it or tell us what it says.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the authorized version here. All right. So Exodus 26:24, and they shall be coupled together beneath, and they shall be coupled together above the head of it unto one ring. Thus shall be for them both, they shall be for the two corners. So again, you have Mekaitzot. So this is basically a Hebrew word, and it's spelled with an ayin, and an ayin is basically you know, this is where we get our English word eye from. You know, it's referring to an opening, and it is this spelling of that. If you if you do your due diligence and looking at the concordance entries and everything, a segmented circle is what it implies.
Oh.
And so a segmented circle is, again, radically different than the that box shape that they got going on. And a lot of them, what you'll see is they'll put in they'll put, getting into the tent pegs and poles. Let me go back to see if I can go through this a little more eloquently. Yeah, here's a real life model. I think this is one out of Oklahoma. You can see in the background there is a big silver post. I'm sorry, a big silver ball on top of this post. So just to give you some perspective on how much silver they're given, they're given 100 pieces that are 1 talent apiece, and you're making 1 talent pieces for all the tabernacle construction. But for the courtyard gate, you're only given I want to say 1775 shekels, which is, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 50 pounds. And so you're given that for the whole courtyard. And so to make a big ball, I mean, 1 or 2 of these balls, if they're solid silver, that's all you get for the whole courtyard. So altogether, the volume of this silver sitting on top of each of those posts, it would be comparable to an iPhone as far as the volume. So it's that small. That little bit of silver is all you get to connect the post to the curtain rod above. So you're basically looking at again, just these things are utter fabrications. They're fantasy, and bad fantasy at that. Because who builds like this? Show me one nomadic culture that's making large large beams stood upright vertically. Putting big silver ingots in the ground. Why would you want to do that with a precious metal? It escapes all logic and reason.
This doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
On this mock-up here, these certainly aren't actual silver balls. This is all artificial material, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. So, you keep on substituting stuff, again, for the sake of keeping the religious fantasy alive. The curtains on top of the structure, to have 4 layers on a tent, again, who does 4 layers on a tent? But if you look at doing hand woven, loom woven materials, then your prices start going up. But again, nobody takes that literally to the point of, figuring out, okay, how are these loops supposed to be made? How are we supposed to connect these things? This model, it looks like they have almost more or less a tarp. Now this big bar they got going down in the middle or along the edge, again, there's no precedent for that in the text. It talks about loops in the curtains in Exodus, I want to say 26, 3 or 4, and then again in probably 26, 9 or 10, somewhere in that neighborhood. It talks about the curtains and how they're supposed to be joined together, loop to loop. Well, if the curtains are joined together loop to loop, they make a point of telling you how it's supposed to all come together into one swatch, supposedly. And then at the bottom here, they have connecting apparatus to pull it tight, so they're pulling it to the ground. Again, it never says to do that, never says to make these interconnections on the curtains. So if all the curtains are supposed to be of one measure, like it says, and they're all supposed to be joined with loop to loop to loop, you've got actually 2 sides where it's this whole thing is in non-compliance because the front edge, the leading edge of this, is not joined to another curtain.
Yeah.
So if you follow, the only the logical outworking of the literal adherence to the text is that you make a ring, a loop, a cylinder. Again, you see the large, basically copper pieces. Well, you're given less copper to use than you are silver. And so to make these big, again, ingots, you get these decorative ones on top, you got a bar kind of coming over. Let me see if I have some other, okay. Here's one they had set up in a gym somewhere. Yeah, you can't see quite as much on that detail. I like the Holman. This is a Holman Bible here. Some people believe that the tabernacle courtyard was 15 cubits tall because they think that the tabernacle is 10 and that the 5 cubit dimension on the courtyard was to say 5 cubits over that. Now here again, you'll see, these big, they must be logs, because if they're silver, they're going to be weighing, if they're copper, they're going to be weighing many, many tons. So you have this this monstrosity is what it is. And here's the irony in this. Look at all the tents around. They're all yurt.
Yeah.
They're all yurt-like.
Your yurts.
Yeah, this is like an all-American version, everyone being red, white, and blue. We have again these big posts, and here they put in two bases. Well, what about all the rest of the quote bases? All these curtains are loose. The stuff would be blowing be holding up like a billboard in the wind. And so how are these secured? And again, the imagination just starts to run wild with anything that's drawn up in the art is thought to be represent reality in some way. I'm sure Moshe Rabbeinu used this what do you call it? Galvanized strut. That's one of the one in Israel uses galvanized strut to just lean up against the thing to keep it standing. So again, the materials are always a lie, and it's remarkable what people have accepted just because of the imagery, and some of the reason they accept it is because then the translators. So this is all back-fed into the translations.
Is that a sacred bird bath out there?
That is a sacred bird bath, and it's interesting you mentioned that, because if you think about doing sacrifice, and if you think this is what they're using for washing their hands and feet, well, how many guys and how many sacrifices and how much water do you have? It's just it's just one more artistic interpretation gone wrong. This is the Timna model, I think. Use wood rods. I'm sorry, I'm looking for. Here's another very popular depiction of the tabernacle. Here they have this dyed red, and then this is what they're referring to as the badger skin in King James. Well, I know that there's some different animals, like as far as dolphin or porpoise, and some of the translations say hides of sea cows. So they have some tradition that this is some exotic leather they got from some sea animals. But when you're doing leather, you're going to tan leather, and so this layer that they have is reddened. Well, why make a reddened layer if it's beneath all the other ones? You're and this other one that they put on top of it, it looks like fur. So why would you want this fuzzy stuff on top of, you know, and you got rain and dust and all this kind of stuff. So this is the 10 linen curtains beneath. Again, the curtains are all decorative. Why decorate them if you can only see them on the ceiling?
Did you ever determine what that particular animal was?
I don't believe it's an animal. I believe it was a different means of treating the leather. I think it was probably ram or gazelle, and I think it was treated so that it would have a higher opacity.
Jeremy Leduc says that it was goat skin, according to the Septuagint.
Yeah, I would accept goat as a possibility. Let's see. Let me bring that up in 14 here. Yeah, tafshim is the Hebrew for them. Elim is again, they have this translated as rams. Here they have ram skin dyed red and a covering of, again, badger skin. So this skin, if this is the upper layer of skin, I'll go to let's see, my model up here. You know, this is my website. So you basically got this upper ring, upper circle, and on top of that is where your upper layer is. So it's pretty common in yurts. If you start looking at different yurt designs, maybe not this one. Okay, there we go. So these are pictures of a yurt. There's me outside. This is part of how I figured out that this thing was round. Is I used to work at part-time doing a snowboard instructor at one of our Wisconsin's great mountains. And if you take a look at this building, it's got like an interior hoop. It's got a cable in there, which keeps the tension. So you have the weight of the building wants to push down and out, and so that's actually what the curtains are doing. One of the curtain sets. But getting back into that skin. So at the very top of the top of this yurt structure, you got this dome. Here they got is kind of like a skylight. So if you do yurt, you can take a look at anywhere in the world and they're all the same. Center skylight. So if you have this thing as a skylight, the whole structure in a sense turns into a sundial. The question is did they allow it to open, for purposes of ventilation? I mean, that's part of the benefits of the yurt is, you're able to get a, kind of a chimney effect, with, purging of heat, and then it has kind of a natural draw. So you'd be pulling cool air in from the bottom all the time. Let's see. Other pictures here. Yeah, this is interesting. This is a tower up in Shiloh. So, Shiloh, they've got. This is where the tabernacle is believed to have been for short of 400 years. And in Shiloh, they have. I think they built this in 2012 or 2013. This is kind of like a watchtower. The fact that they built it round on this site is to me very. I don't know, maybe it's telling, maybe it's, let's see, Shiloh. So people say that, that's like one of the proofs. It's like, have you been to Shiloh? Because they've got kind of some bedrock that seems to be shaped in a rectangular way. And they have a couple of holes in the ground where they think, oh, these are post holes for the tabernacle. Well, first of all, in the rectangular models, they always assume these posts are above ground. they think they're above ground. They're tethered together with ropes, and they have a big steel or a big copper base. So again, why do you have at Shiloh the let me see if I can get a Shiloh. Here's another Shiloh. They actually got a synagogue shaped like the old traditional one. So that's not too far away from, here's another Shiloh. Again, this is the concrete version of it. So this is the more or less the inhabited part of Shiloh, and then there's also outside of that is the more antique part where I don't have that as far as my I have this the bedrock. The bedrock of that, again, they say that, well, this is maybe where the building rested, again based on a rectangular footprint on the ground. I mean, this could have been anything. It could have been a sheep pen. It could have been a McDonald's, for all we know, ancient McDonald's. I kind of doubt that. But they wanted to, they're trying to establish this as, archaeological find and so forth. It's, it's digging for nonsense in that case. The thing would have left a very small footprint as far as, and as far as where they had it too, it's on this part of a hillside that's not very conducive. When you want to build something or erect something, you want to put on something flat. So I don't know how the ground has been shaped over the years from erosion or what have you. Yeah, I'm trying to find. Okay. Yeah, I should bring that one up. So there's been probably at least a half a dozen physical models that they've built, or that are, I shouldn't say that they're running present day. There's just two in Israel. This is the picture I was looking for before. There are two of them in Israel right now. There was a third one at some point, I think closer to Jericho, if I'm not mistaken, that I think they decommissioned. But right now, one is in Ariel and the other one is in down near Eilat, at Timna Park, which is like a large archaeological park. They have find some Egyptian things there and so forth. But here's another one of these cases of the it's documented absurdity of size and scale. Look at the size of this guy. If you start stacking them head to head to head, is that 10 cubits? And they've got these planks that are they're all in alignment based on sliding poles through rings in this case. Again, that's here they have kind of a guy's pry bars working on a plank, and this is one of the silver pieces. So if you can imagine this being solid silver, okay, this is the way they have drawn up. This would probably be in excess of 5 tons if this was silver, I would bet. Maybe even 10 tons.
Everything on all these illustrations look like they're straight out of the 19th century. Yeah,
a lot of them are. There are a lot of engravings, and they have such a lasting impact in the mind. Some of them date back to probably 1600s. There's a few of them that are that old. Here's another one showing the roof, and again the roof they're showing this as solid solid straight lines. No draping curtains and so forth. So this this myth is just perpetuated. It's again, why would you want a? Oh, here we go. Our kind of our circular tents in the background again. Why would you want to make a tent that has this kind of material mass and weight and density? It's just contrary to the principles of how you make a tent. there's a lot to, people talk about how, the boards were gilded and it all was like this great mirror finish. Well, you start looking at, testing that claim, and, the gold, if you start taking all the gold, calculate how much gold there'd be, the gold would be thinner than aluminum foil. And so if you can try imagining moving a beam that's anywhere between 1 and 3 tons, that's covered with aluminum foil, lots of luck to you, I guess. Again, traditional yurt. This is, it's not a very,
oh,
yeah.
That one.
Okay.
Nice view.
Yeah. So, giving you some idea of scale, again, I have this on my website, and I'm kind of using a more kind of a jazzed up version of this for cover. But altogether, your footprint of this compared to what I call the shoebox here, it'd be about 17 times the surface area using the same materials. You would have, I want to say it's 30 sometimes if you look at it from the standpoint of volume. So if you're lugging all this stuff through the wilderness only to make, this tight, it's basically a really heavy footprint. It's a very, as far as you picture it in your house, when you have studs in your wall, rather than putting studs in your wall, would you take the 2x4s and butt them together side by side? That's in effect what they're doing with their material. Oops. Yeah. So here's another one. Again, large silver clumps on top of posts. Again, wood posts that were supposed to be copper posts. So they always look elaborate, but again, the details, compare them. Most of these things you can even test out in an English translation. Say, no, that doesn't make sense. If you trust your English translation. Okay. Oops. Yeah, this here one is at Timnah. I think I was telling you about that before. The Timnah site is, they actually have the, let's see, galvanized here. Right along this ridge here, they've got like large galvanized, probably 2 or 3 inch, or probably 3 inch square galvanized pieces that stilted up against the center of the building there, or at the top of the building, and then they embed, at least 5 or 6 feet in ground, underground in this thing. This is, I guess it's a German engineered structure, and the Germans, when in doubt, make it stout. That's their motto on this concoction, anyway. But delete this. There it is. So yeah, in the book, I'm basically going through chapter 26, chapter 27, in in pretty extreme detail. On a lot of these, I'm giving, yeah, I got a little QC tag. I don't know how many people have either worked in manufacturing where you're doing quality control, or even in your blue jeans, you find in your blue jeans a little tag that says, inspected by number 10, right? So you got, I'm kind of presenting these all like they're inspections, and saying, okay, what do we got going that's wrong with this model? How does it violate the text? So here I've got the first 10 curtains where I'm removing them. It says in the text they set them into 2 sets of 5. So here's the question: why do we set them into 2 sets of 5? Again, especially if we're going to butt them all together. It's talk about making them all with blue loops. So first of all, why are the loops blue, and then why is it that you need to connect them with the blue loops? Again, I was talking about the weave, the loom weaving, and how it's on these long edges, or the extreme edges. The cut edges are the ones that you're attaching on. And so here I've got the it's in a transformation state, being transformed from the rectangular. So when we start to put them all edge to edge like they're supposed to be, kind of loop to loop. And again, this is just talking about how there's gold tackets which are connecting the loops. So here we have a 2 sets of 5, like the text is talking about, and this is where it's coming together again in this decagonal arrangement. So we have 10 commandments. Should we be surprised that the structure is sitting upon 10 pillars? And these are, this is literally called the Mishkan. So you got Shekan is, you get the Shekinah glory, people refer to, but the Shekan is having to do with the dwelling and the dwelling place. So it says, Exodus 26:1, that these curtains, these 10 curtains, are the dwelling place. It's within these, it's in the midst of these 10 curtains where the dwelling place is. So again, we have this issue of blue loops, and why are we connecting them in blue loops? Their model really never, you start looking at the colors and how these curtains are stitched together, and what you'll see is they don't really have a sense of obligation that they need to abide by that rule. Oh, jumping ahead here, sorry. So you're basically starting with one layer of linen curtains, which are 10 cubits long. Again, here you got linen. Linen has a tensile strength, not too far off of steel. If you look at linen, they use it for rope making. So it's a plant-based fabric. It's it's very strong. So again, why do you have in the rectangular model, they got linen as the lowest layer, and then they got wool sitting on top of it. What does the text talk about for mixing mixing fabrics? Some people say, well, it's because the tabernacle is sacred, and only the Almighty is allowed to do that. Some people again reason that, and okay, but that's like someone saying, okay, a parent saying, don't smoke, now get me my lighter. It's not good leading by example, if you will. So again, the curtains, the linen is there for strength, and as I was showing you before, how you have within a yurt is it has a hoop. They tend to have a cable hoop around the top, or rope or what have you, to absorb that outward load that the roof is imposing. So you need to have dead weight support beneath it, but you also have to have something that opposes it from wanting to kind of explode outwards or fall outwards as it's all leaning inward and down. So I shouldn't move that. So these are the 11 wool curtains. So again, wool is it's not as strong as linen, but it weathers real well. So this is being used more or less as a wind barrier. So right now I have all the curtains kind of laying flat, so you can kind of see them. Before you're basically slinging the curtains onto a metal frame, metal courtyard frame. We have there are 11 of them, and it talks about folding the last one in half. So again, you've got 30 times 10 is 300, and then times with the 11th one, again, it was 30, but you're folding it in half, and this is where your pi value is coming from again. So this is like the most accurate version of pi on record, in the ancient world, most known to the ancient world. And if you look at one of the names for God, of course, is El Shaddai. Now, Shaddai is spelled Shin Dalet Yud, and the Shin numerically is worth 300. And as far as its letter shape, you've got it looking a lot like a 3, and then the Dalet, and then the Yud. So the Yud is worth 10 in Hebrew, and then your Dalet is worth 4, and your Shin is worth 300. So you put that all together, you have El Shaddai is the god of pi. 314. So we have in the mezuzahs, of course, mezuzah they put at the gate, and you've got Shaddai on the mezuzah. So here at the gate of the house, you're basically expressing it, a covenant with the Eternal One, kind of the eternal God, the Ein Sof, that which is without beginning or end. So there's interesting symbology, but altogether this was it is the most accurate value that the ancients had on record for pi, and this has all been sitting in the Peshat text. This is within 0.05%. So to give you some sort of perspective, that's like that's 2 inches over the course of the length of like a football field. So they had it, and I think it might actually be more accurate than that if you start looking into different details and layers of the text. I haven't proven that yet, but again, here's our leather, the 2 layers of leather that they're presuming that they're putting one over the next. Well, if you have leather like this and you're going to have it stitched together somehow, you're going to have some leaks in it. So when it rains on your relatively flat roof, it's going to seep through that first layer, collect on the second. It's going to be all hot and dark, and it's just going to be nasty, mildewy. It's again, it might not need to rain often, but when it does, it's not good. Okay, that's the end of the first chapter anyway. So maybe I should I guess open up for questions. I don't know what how are we tracking on time, Jackson? Oh, Jackson's gone. Oh, maybe I'll try to check out the Jackson, you there? Okay, I can't. I'll try to go over to the chat here and see what's going on. Okay.
Jackson stepped away.
Okay.
He wrote it like that.
I was just rambling for quite a while there, so. Roll them on palm trees just like the pyramids. Actually, I think these beams, they would have probably had them on wheels, because each of these beams is about a ton, and so on flats you're looking at 2 oxen typically would be pulling something as heavy as a ton, so it would be much more than that. So some of the parts would you basically have wheels. There's mention in the text about let's see, some let me think. The wheels. There's mention in the text about wagons, and if you start looking at the wagons and the size of the teams of the animals, it couldn't have possibly carried all the wood. So you would have been looking at probably a team of oxen, maybe a half a dozen per every board. What do I uncover regarding the cherubim pictures weaved into the curtains of the tabernacle? That's, how would I say, that's one of the hints and one of the secrets that's in this. And there's confusion as to what cherubim are. And, they tend to draw the Sphinx or the Zephyrs or the angels, the hallmark things. So that one is right now, how would I say, that is something I'm going to refrain from I'll leave that up to the audience to figure out. But the cherubim are included in the diagrams that I have of the structure. So you just have to look a little harder, probably. So. Yeah, so there's I guess maybe seeing I don't have any other questions here, I guess I just want to talk a little bit about some of the importance of this structure. I guess I think this is a matter of kind of modern day fulfillment, prophetic fulfillment, and I think it has to do with joining the 2 houses of Israel back together. If you look at it from the structure standpoint, it's being created in 2 halves, in a north half and a south half. And what do you have in Israel? You've got the southern kingdom, Judah to the south, you have Ephraim to the north. So that same pattern, there's actually a beam that runs the whole structure length of the tabernacle. So getting into this idea of 2 houses, you're in joining the 2 houses, you are literally putting together the sticks, to bring 2 sticks together in my hand. And I guess getting into Ezekiel here. So Ezekiel actually makes mention of the structure as Ephraim and Judah are brought back together into the foothills. Where's that? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, it's not working. Just getting killed with technical difficulties here, sorry. Okay, so if we go to Ezekiel 37, 16, 17, take thee one stick and write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for the house of Israel, his companions. And join them together into one stick, and they shall become one in thine hand. I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all. And they shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms any more at all. My tabernacle shall be with them. Yea, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And the heathen will know that I, the Lord, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. So in this text, it's making mention to the Mishkan, and so very specific Mishkan as opposed to this is 37, 38, as opposed to temple. And so everyone's always thinking again in their eschatology, temple, 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 temple. And here's reference to after the two have come back together, and to the joining of the two sticks. It's also a picture of the joining of the two houses. So again, you get the two sticks within the house. Okay, let me see here. Okay, yeah, Mishkani right here, my Mishkan basically. So this is something that's always overlooked before they're on their way to Ezekiel's temple. There was a guy, I think is a Christo-Philadelphian who actually believed Ezekiel's temple was round, and there's mention the Hebrew word saviv is describes that, and so this is a guy 100 years ago who's basically putting this forth with Ezekiel's temple. Now he didn't make any connections to this, but so yeah, I'm kind of convinced that this is something that can be constructed, should be constructed. I've actually made a 22-foot model, and at least of the frame, and it stands quite well. And again, I'm hoping to do a larger one. Another interesting part of this is the way that all this kind of ties into the body, the human body. So you got the New Testament. Don't you know that the body is a temple of or the temple of the Lord type thing. So you have this notion of a dwelling place, and the Hebrew Mishkan has to do with dwelling. And with Mishkan, the dwelling in us, again, there's parallels. You've got the leather, the skins, the wood is like bone in a lot of ways. There's certain numerical correlations between this structure and different parts of the human body, whether it's muscles or bones or all that. So I'm actually working on a third book right now, which is not helping me get out my first and second one so much, but I guess I'm hoping to release this one in the next next month or two. But I was kind of guessing that back in the spring, but having some setbacks in that. I'm going to see if we have any other questions here.
I have one for you. What
Yep.
you were talking about before, I was thinking about before it came up, and this is pretty obscure itself. The tabernacle, can you still hear me?
Yes.
All right. The tabernacle of the body supposedly is an earlier idea than, say, we find in the Gospel of John or the Acts of the Apostles. Now, there's a passage out each one of them. I wonder if there's a comment on. One is in John 1:18, I think, where it says that the Logos dwelt among us. Actually, the word there is the Greek equivalent of tabernacled. He tabernacled. That word is enskane, eskanison, enskanosin. In skinned, it means tented, with the idea that in Paul's letters, the tabernacle of the body, I'm wondering if that isn't really an indication there of when Yeshua came to dwell with people during maybe the Feast of the Tabernacles. In another place in Acts chapter 2, we've got Kipha talking about the fallen tabernacle of Dawid. Now, on that one, I was thinking about, well, this is long before Dawid, and the tabernacle was used, I guess, up until the time of Solomon. Is there any significance to the use of those terms?
Yeah, I guess getting into the in those days I will repair David's fallen tent. I think that's out of Isaiah 9:11-ish or something.
Yeah, it's a quote quoted in Acts 2.
Yeah, that promise, that's actually mentioning to, or as I recall, it's referring to Sukkah. So you got Sukkah, you got Ohel, and you have Mishkan and Hikel for the temple, or Mikdash. And so the only parallels there are between the, I guess, in the literal language that's used in the Tanakh about these structures is, Mishkan is always exclusively reserved for this structure. In it you've got Kiddush Kiddushin, you've got the Holy of Holies, that's in this structure, but then you also have that terminology being used in the temple as well. But apart from that, that mention of David's fallen tent is making reference to Sukkah. And the Sukkah, it's kind of interesting because you have the word Sukkah comes from Sukkach, with basically Samic, cough, cough. Let me go back to my, okay. Let's see. Actually, maybe I'll just type because my handwriting is atrocious and I can usually type faster than I can write. Okay. And David. Okay, so and this has a lot of interesting stuff when you start looking at the paleo as well. As far as between Sukkah and Sukkach, let me bring this into ancient Hebrew. Okay, so Samic is in the ancient, more ancient language, has a it's like a pin or a tack that's being put somewhere. So if you look at the structure, how do they place everything? They would have put in the center a tack, and you'd walk around the perimeter to establish the perimeter, with a string and a tack to make a circle. It's kind of a no-brainer. So here you have the Hebrew word sakak, and sakak is where we get our English word sack, like a sack of potatoes. This is basically got origins in being a mesh bag, like a burlap bag. And sakak is being like, you've got the kaf, and it's making reference to like bramble, basically. So if you got like thorny bramble that you could make as a barrier, and you could actually use this as a as a fencing of sorts, keeping your animals in by means of bramble, basically. So your sakak is basically showing the kaf. Kaf is basically hands, and so kapayim is clapping of hands. So you get the two hands together. So this whole thing is like sukak, in that it's two hands that are made by more or less a circle. So again, there you have sukkah as well, which is the other word that's more or less, that's what David replacing David's fallen tent is referring to sukkah. So again, you've got the hay is out of it. So what the guy arms standing up, I guess, is subject to debate on that distinction between that that form of the root. It's kind of a shorter, losing that second kaf. Actually, the this is a safit, but oops, there we go. There we go, sukach. So getting in the tent is ohel, and so there's confusion about ohel as well. In that the outer courtyard is referred to as ohel, and the problem with this is people are expecting they're expecting a roof over a tent. The word for ohel is actually, I have it right above. So this is ohel, and this again is making reference to the aleph is like the leader. It's also referring to strength. The hay is like a guy holding something up, and the lamed is like a stick. So you have ohel is being this, it's this barrier of strong sticks held up, and the ohel. I think there's listening to a thing from Rabbi Sachs. He actually said that very point blank. Ohel doesn't necessarily have a roof. So you've got make this big here. And then you've also got Mishkan. Mishkan, there we go. So this is again where you get Shekan, Shekinah, oops, here we go. So the Shekinah glory, this is the dwelling of the glory. An interesting thing here, getting into the spelling of Mishkan, the mem is often, Mishkan, let me turn this into a paleo yet here. The ancient, there we go. So the mem is associated with water. Some people believe that it resembles the womb. So you've got kind of like a back or a backbone that's is that back part of the mem, and then you've got the bulge outward. So this is again emblematic of pregnancy, and so within that womb you have the the mem, you got the water, the water, this chaos, this potential, is the idea, kind of tied into the mem. And then the shin is like a teeth. Teeth are, there's a pair. You have the idea of pressing. And then kaf is again, we're saying, it's based on the hand. And then the noon. So you have this whole, this incredible picture of pregnancy that comes from this, from the Mishkan. You've got the mem being like a womb, and the shin being like the two pieces pressing together, the kaf's like two hands, and then the seed inside. So it's a very, there's just so many deep layers of imagery in this thing. It's, I would rather dedicate more of my time just to research than trying to convey these ideas. But if I don't convey them, then they're just rattling around in my head, I guess. But, so again, Mishkan is it's emblematic. It's a picture. Just the word itself is a picture of what the structure, how it's shaped or what it's resembling, and there's just layers to it, I guess. So. And so you've also got, again, kadosh or mikdash, and this is this is where you have commonality between the temple and the tabernacle. Let's see, here we go. So and then mikdash, there we go. So again, you got the kiddush kiddushin, the holy of holies, and so this is the only word that's really common to those structures. So what it was, David's tent. Again, that wasn't even ohel, that was sukkah. And the question in my mind is, did David set up another tabernacle at the time of during that time of transition between, loss of the temple? You have to remember the Ark of the Covenant had been lost at the time of Eli, and had actually came to dwell at a private residence. And so they were still sacrificing at the tabernacle. The priests were still set up there to some degree. And until, Saul obviously, killed a lot of those, a lot of the priests back then. So this time of David, when he brings the Ark of the Covenant to him, what does he do? He's lamenting the fact. He says, if only the Ark could come to me. And then he also is regretting the fact that the Ark is just sitting in a tent. So this reference to David's fallen tent, although it is sukkah, you could also make reference to the line, that Davidic, dynasty has fallen. But you can also, if you're going to literally kind of connect the dots and say David had the ark in the tent, did David construct a mishkan that was more or less like the first one? What kind of tent did David put the ark in? It's this intertemple tabernacle time, I guess, is a real, there's not a lot written about it, and at least not that I'm aware of. I haven't researched everything that the Jews have to say on it, but there's some good traditions and there's some not so good traditions, obviously, and the shoebox is obviously one of them. So, any other questions on that, or? I'll see if our chat, if there's anything else in the chat.
Do you want to call it till next week? This has been great.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling through some of these comments here. Yeah, the cubits. Oh. Okay. Yeah. I guess these are more comments as opposed to questions and everything. So yeah, sorry I wasn't better prepared here. The reboot is it didn't help me. So.
Well, it was great. Nevertheless, when you got going and all, this happens all the time with this stuff, but don't worry about that. The content was excellent. He really stirred up a lot of very interesting questions and comments. And if you would care to, I'd love to have you back next Shabbat for the same time, same place.
Sure.
All right, super. Anybody else? Else, we're going to end the meeting, and thank you all for coming. Yes, all say thank you very much, Andrew, and we'll see you soon. I'll be sending you over a link to your presentation here, and just as soon as I can. Thank you all. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.